Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Holy Smokes, Cigars and Spirituality. I'm Christian A. Smith, the host and the heretic here, also the pastor of the Faith Community. I am so glad that you're here because, as usual, we are bringing more disruptive, faith based content for the everyday person. And today, we got a special show. But first, shout out to all of our patrons on Patreon who are with us today in the live virtual audience. We're so glad that you're here. Everybody that's listening on the various podcast platforms when this comes out, we're so glad that you're tuning in. And to our friends over at Fam Radio, shout out to you as well. Today's episode is Pro-Heaux theology. It's really a thing, y'all. I just found this out like a couple of months ago, but I'm so excited to have this conversation. I might be a little bit nervous too. Well, I guess I shouldn't. We talk about crazy stuff all the time, but
Nervous,
today,
Reverend. Nervous.
nervous, Doc, nervous. I love it. So we have a special guest with us today, Tyranny AT&T Jordan. She's one of our producers. She is our subject matter expert on all things womanism. We're so glad to have her. She's also a host of her own podcast, Sassy Soulversations. So you should check her out as well. Tyranny, welcome to the group today. Go ahead and introduce yourself real quick.
Hello. My name, like you said, I'm Tierney. I am not smoking or drinking anything because I'm at the in-laws house and that is a no-go around these parts. And gotta respect people's house rules. Am I supposed to answer the question right now?
Oh no, we're gonna get to it in a second. I just wanted people to
Oh,
hear your voice.
okay. Well, yes.
Yeah.
Hi, it is me. I'm she.
You gotta love AT&T, Madam All the Things. She does a little bit of everything, and we're glad to have her here tonight. So,
Are we going to add a nickname to her for the night of Vera?
why you want to call her Vera? Because of Harlem Nights. All right. Sorry to everybody that's listening. That was a little backstage inside joke. We have fun in the pre-show with the fam. So we're gonna keep it going. We have one rule here at Holy Smokes. We don't get into a whole bunch of rules. We not big into try to put restraints on how people live their lives, but we do have one rule here at Holy Smokes, and that one rule is that we honor each other's lived experiences.
What's the rule, Reverend?
All right, I'll say it again for the Kingmaker. We have one rule, and that is that we honor each other's lived experiences.
For the people in the back, one more time, Reverend.
Okay, for y'all in the back, in case you didn't hear me the first two times, we have one rule here. We honor and respect each other's lived experiences. That is so important in conversations like this because many times when we start talking about life, faith, and theology, people tend to lift up their theory and their doctrine over somebody else's lived experience. So, what we challenge people to do here in this setting is that when you encounter somebody whose lived experience act and like contradicts your doctrine or your theory, you take that as an opportunity to learn from what they have lived. And that one rule is rooted in greatest commandment theology, which is a strand of theology that I curated. It very simply states this. It says that your love for God is expressed in how you love your neighbor, which is an extension of how you love yourself. Therefore, you can't fully love God if you don't love your neighbor. And you can't fully love your neighbor if you don't love yourself. So that is the root and the basis of our one rule. That's pretty much the basis for everything that I do in ministry. It's the basis for how the faith community and Holy Smokes operates. So we're glad that you're here. We're going to keep it going because we got a lot of people from the family today. So I want to go ahead and get into these introductions so everybody has a chance to speak and you can hear everybody's voice. So today, by way of introduction, I want you to share with us, what are you smoking? What are you drinking, if anything? And then tell us, since the topic today is pro-Heaux theology, let's go ahead and just establish real quick, What is your definition of hoe? What is your definition of hoe? So I'll start off. My name is Christian Smith. I'm the heretic again. Because tonight is such a heavy topic, I went with a heavy cigar, one of my favorites, the LFD Andalusian Bull. For all of the cigar aficionados, you might be a little bit jealous right now because these are hard to find. I understand, but I'm flexing on y'all tonight with my Andalusian Bull. And then I'm having a dram of Bullet Bourbon, the Blender Select. This is very near and dear to my heart because the master blender of this particular bottle is an alum of Alabama Agricultural and Mechanical University on Normal's Hill. And that is my alma mater. That is the Kingmaker's alma mater. We are very proud of our institution and all the people doing great things that come from Alabama A&M. So what is my definition of hoe? My definition of hoe is very simple. It's a person that has multiple sexual partners to whom they are not committed. That's my definition. It's not gender specific when I define it, but it's just a person that has multiple sexual partners and they're not committed to them beyond their commitment in the sexual encounter. That's my definition. I want to kick it over real quick to Myron the Mystic. Go ahead and introduce yourself, brother.
Hello, friends. Myron the Mystic. I'm excited to be with y'all here for another episode of Holy Smokes. I am smoking the Holy Smokes House Blend. You get this if you are a patron at the $30 level. We'll send one to your house. So get you one. I'm smoking it right now. And I am drinking, I'll tell you actually in just a little bit when I do the cigar moment. So stay tuned and I'll tell you what I'm smoking. Or drinking, rather.
Yes, sir. And how
can you answer the rest of the question?
Oh, I got more. I'm okay. So listen, my definition of hoe is a garden tool.
Oh, there it is.
That's my definition. I got trouble.
Damn it, Myron.
And so, I mean, we're going to talk about it tonight. I'm here to learn, and I'll tell you my reservations when we get to it, but my definition is a garden tool right now.
Well, there it is. I think you stole Grayson's thunder. So I'm gonna give Grayson.
You asked me first.
I'm gonna give Grayson a chance to gather himself, and then we're gonna go over the tea. And as Tyranny, what is your definition of hoe?
Okay, so I forgot, I didn't do the answers right. So I just want to say, hey, and I'm happy to be here. Because I was supposed to say that the first time and I was moving too fast. So, hey, and I'm happy to be here. All right. And so my definition of hoe, I think it's someone who is sexually free. And I would agree with what Christian said about them having multiple partners that they are not in a committed relationship with. But I think it could also go past that. So if you're in a relationship and you and your partner have agreed that you can have multiple partners, I feel like that the definition can be expanded to include that as well. And so, yeah.
Thank you, madam. Thank you so much. We had an episode on polyamory not too long ago. You should go check that out. Talking about couples, or should I say romantically connected groups of people beyond the binary of one man and one woman, and talking about the implications of that in scripture. You should really go check out that episode. Grayson, I hope you're ready because we're coming to you next. What are you smoking and or drinking, if anything? And what is your definition of hoe?
Hey everyone, I'm Grayson. Glad to be here. More glad than Tyranny. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am not smoking anything, but I am drinking. I'm excited about this. A Georgia Hooch IPA from Down Home Brewing Company. They are a Black-owned brewery in the Atlanta area, which, you know, for beer culture is really significant because it's a very white-dominated culture, breweries, all that. So when I saw these at Trader Joe's, I knew I had to buy them, especially for Black History Month. So if you see Down Home Brewing Company, make sure to give them your money because Black-owned businesses need it. And it's really good too. It's a very good IPA. And my definition of hoe is somebody who has taken the time to like a gardening tool, dig into their sexuality and unearth what fertile soil might be underneath, so that then life may come from it, and however that may manifest itself, whether it's somebody who's actively having sex, whether that's somebody who's just very sure of their sexuality, or even in the case of asexual individuals who might enjoy just, doing OnlyFans or doing something that people can see. They don't necessarily have to have sex, but they have to have a sexuality that they're in tune with.
I like that. I don't know much about asexuality. I think I should start researching that a little bit more because it's foreign to me. But thank you for bringing that up, because now it has piqued my interest. And also, Josh, I apologize. Josh just said one of our patrons, and he was a special guest on our episode earlier this season, I'll Sleep When I'm Dead. And he said, I loved Bullet Bourbon until the owners blacklisted their lesbian daughter. I did not know that. I promise you, Josh, I'm not going to buy anything from Bullet but this particular bottle, because I got to support my Black sister from Alabama A&M. I got to. And that's the hard part. The intersectionality of oppression is like, it gets very difficult sometimes. But, we hate to see that, Josh. And we stand with you and their lesbian daughter who was blacklisted. That's trash. Let's keep it going. Karima Akila, the truth. Tell us, what are you smoking and or drinking, if anything, and how do you define hope?
Well, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning to whenever you all find yourselves listening to this very, very important podcast. Today, it's been a long day, and I got some things I got to pull off. So whenever I got to pull off some crazy shit, that's when I need to go to the thing that rhymes with, my other name right there. Tequila rhymes with tequila. So therefore, it's, when I got to pull some stuff off, that's what I go to. So this here is some 1921 Reposado that we got from the good country of Mexico.
That packaging is so nice.
Isn't it nice? And it had the little wax on the little situation up here. You know what I'm saying? I had to peel that off. Little children start chewing on the wax. I had to stop doing that, catch a little good Corona. But anyhow, let's see. And then I learned this, drink, you take the tequila and you take yourself some cucumbers, you see here. And then you add some agave if you got that, but I ain't got that because Sharon used that all up. So instead I put some honey in here, and you muddle up the honey with the cucumber, and you add the reposado up on there. And since I have not had anything to eat today, we just gonna sip this real slow, or this gonna turn into a whole nother situation. We don't want that. We're trying to keep our ratings, somewhat PG, I guess, 17 maybe. But anyhow, my definition of hoe, what it used to be was, I'll be honest, I, back in the day, related it only to women who were loose with their sexuality, who had multiple sexual partners without any type of rhyme or reason. Then, as I got a little older, the definition changed to, oh, yeah, men are hoes for sure. And I can beat them at their own game. I'll let your imagination run wild with that. Now, what I see now as the definition of hoe is, multiple sexual partners, but there seems to be some distinction around it. There seems to be some purpose to it. So I can't wait to dig into this discussion, and I'm going to sip that tequila nice and slow so it does not go all the way left.
Yes, please do. If you need to, get your little piece of,
give me a little chicken wing and go get a chicken.
Right, some crackers or something. Soak that up a little bit. I don't want you to be on here slurring. We do not promote drunkenness at Holy Smoke Cigars and Spirituality. Just in case you were wondering, praise the Lord, everybody.
But damn it, I might need a chicken wing too. Then send me one.
I run you some Old Bay chicken wings. I got some downstairs. I run you some.
Yeah, please. I appreciate that.
Me too.
Oh God! All right, Kingmaker, please come in and let's introduce yourself and what's your definition of hope.
Greetings and salutations, everybody. I am Kerbans Ross, the Kingmaker. So excited to be here with you. I am smoking my last Cuban sandwich. Enjoying it. I am drinking the best of three. I have my protein shake to round off my fourth meal of the night. I am also drinking the Lord's vodka in H2O, and I am finishing that off with some good old monkey shoulder, and enjoying this whole encounter. My definition of hoe, I'm a traditionalist, is the female that you cannot turn into a housewife. So with that being the same, I am here to engage in these hotels.
Hotels. Shout out Jasmine Sullivan. That album is dope. Yeah, so that's all the introductions. I can't wait to get into this discussion. But first, we got to get to our cigar tip. Today, we have a very special person who's going to bring our cigar tip. You know him as Myron the Mystic, and right now he's going to come to us with Myron's cigar moment.
Hey, folks. I'm excited to be back with another cigar tip for you here at Myron Cigar Moment. I've got to be honest with you. I love having a great cigar. But even better than having a great cigar is pairing a great cigar with a great cocktail or a great drink or whatever you choose to have as a beverage. And I want to introduce you to one that I just discovered. Here it is. Cavassier. Now, I know what you're saying. Myron, you just discovered Cavassier. You're a little late to the party, but actually, I think all of us are a little late to the party because Cavassier was founded in 1828. And in 1848, the rumor has it, Napoleon himself, Napoleon Bonaparte, my friends, sent cases of Cavassier to the Isle of Helena, where he was in exile. And when ultimately he was released from Helena, he gave his troops Cavassier and cigars to celebrate. So if you want a little taste of liberation, I recommend you have some Cavassier along with a cigar and enjoy it just like me. So have a cocktail, have a cigar, and enjoy some Cavassier.
I love it. I love it.
Pass the Cavassier.
I absolutely love it. I forgot about Liberation Lemonade. I forgot we what was that, season 1?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Liberation Lemonade. I need to have one of those really soon. So as you can see, we've already gotten started. And to anybody who's listening and said they gonna just let the Kingmaker say hoe only applies to women, look, we already got somebody in the comments, Pamela, like, oh, I see. Well, the virtual shit just got stirred. So we'll come back around to it because, you know, this is one of those topics where you're going to get a lot of different opinions on the matter. So I want to go ahead and get started with this conversation. And I want Tierney to lead us off because she's our special guest. And because this concept of pro-hoism or pro-ho theology is such a novel concept to, you know, in my research about it, I've recognized that there are like a lot of different perspectives on what this really means, which is normal when something is like kind of burgeoning and becoming or coming into its own. So for the sake of tonight, T, can you define for us what pro-ho theology is?
Okay, sure. So like you said, there are different strands to it. And so from the birth, so like, of course, starting with theology. Theology is like God talk, how we talk about God, how we think about God, how we interact with the divine. And so pro-ho theology would be like a lens through which you would use to look at the way that you interact with the divine. So similar to womanist theology, feminist theology, Black liberation theology. These are all context-based. These are all lived experience-based. And so pro-ho theology would, so for some people in the feminist movement, it's equivalent to pro-sex work. And so it's literally just stops there. All they're saying is that they are pro-sex work. I ascribe to a broader definition of pro-ho theology from a womanist perspective that doesn't just say pro-sex work. So we are pro-sex work, but we're also pro-do what your grown consenting self want to do with your grown consenting life. And so as you think about that from the perspective of a theological framework, you are making the argument that God would be pro-Ho, and that God would not condemn you for engaging in those actions and for living that lifestyle. And so similar to womanism and feminism, being a hoe, I think, is something that you have to label yourself as. So we can go around talking about all the things that we think are whole behavior and whole activities, but this is not a label that you can just be out here passing out to other people. It's a label that you can claim for yourself, as we are reclaiming the word. So when I use the word whole, it doesn't have a negative connotation for me. And so when you think about a pro-whole theology, the word whole doesn't have a negative connotation. It can be ascribed to all genders from any part of the spectrum, and it is something that you call and claim for yourself.
Thank you, Madam AT&T. But do me a favor, real quick,
Okay.
because not everybody here is familiar with all these different strands of theology and all of these isms.
Yes,
Most people are familiar with feminism, but can you tell us how is womanism related to and different from feminism, so we have a clear understanding of how that plays out?
Awesome. So the word womanist and womanism was first coined by Alice Walker in 1983 when she wrote In Search of Our Mother's Gardens. And so basically, womanist theology centers the lived experiences of Black women as they are fighting sexism, racism, and classism. And so when you think about womanism and when you think about feminism, feminism has traditionally been ran by white women. And so sometimes when you operate in a space of feminism as a Black woman, you experience racism even as you are trying to fight for equalities of your gender. And so ultimately, the goal of womanism and feminism is the same to a certain extent, but the way that you go about achieving that goal is different. So if you consider yourself to be a feminist or even a Black feminist, you're working inside the system of feminism to combat the patriarchy. And if you are working in the frame of a womanist thought, you created your own space. This is a space created for us and by us, and we are fighting against patriarchy, racism, and classism.
She came out strong. She came out real strong. I love it. I think it's important for all of us to recognize the significance of that, because this is where we get into the intersections of oppression, intersectionality. So many times people look at the Black community, and this is really for, especially for my Black people, like, we understand that because we were not accepted or invited into white spaces, we had to create our own stuff. So there is a Black Baptist church because Black people weren't welcome into the white Baptist church. There is an African Methodist Episcopal church because Black people were not welcome or invited into the white mainline Methodist tradition. And it works the same way. So you have people who are feminists, like all about women's empowerment and women's equity. But when that became a movement, it was started by white women, and white women who are advocating for themselves can still be racist. So they'll advocate only for white women. So Black women said, wait a minute, we need to come through with our own thing because we're not fully embraced in many feminist expressions, and womanism is birthed out of that. So it's really important for us to understand the different layers and why womanism is important, because there are unique experiences that Black women have that white women just can't relate to. And so we're really glad to have T here to help us with that and to dig a little bit deeper. I saw Grayson the pundit has his hand up. Go ahead and share something, man.
Yeah, I just wanted to build off that and say womanism is so contextual and lived experience based that, unlike feminism, where there is debate as to whether non-female bodied people can identify as feminist, there is no debate in womanism. So the only two people on this screen right now who can say I am a womanist are Tierney and Karima. It is strictly for and by Black women and people who are not that identity, who don't identify with that, can cite, can amplify, can point to, but we cannot be that.
Thank you for sharing. Hey, this is about disruptive faith-based content for the everyday person. So we're not going to just throw out terms and not make sure our audience understands what those terms mean. Because a lot of times you get shows that talk about theology and it's so academic, you can't even understand what people are saying. Like, because I've studied and been in the academy, I can understand what they're saying, but I'm like, everybody can't understand this. So I really want to make sure that when we talk, we put it in a way that the everyday person can understand without having to go sit in the seminary class and know all of these big terms and these big words. So I want to go ahead and see what the fam has to say about this, because T brought up a number of great pieces of information. And a couple of things that got me was, people can ascribe Ho to themselves, but other people can ascribe that to you for you. You do that for yourself. And then the big one is, Tierney said in her definition of Pro-Heaux theology, it's this concept that God, I don't know if you said God affirms you being a whole or accepts you being a whole. What was the word you used?
I said God doesn't condemn, but I don't think that saying that God affirms is going too far. So I would agree with that as well.
Okay, let's just go ahead and start right there. Karima Akila, since you the truth, tell us, how does that resonate with you? Talk to us.
Woo, first of all, Tierney, my sister, you brought the whole class. You snatched everybody's edges, okay? Right there in one, zoop, that's what you did right there. And so I appreciate it. And one other thing I want to say about that too is, yes, we are both Black women, and there is a generational gap between us, right? This year I turned 47. And so I'm proud to say so. Mm-hmm.
You're looking good.
Oh,
you're looking good.
You look marvelous. You look marvelous.
I appreciate
my.
God has been good. I've had my weary days, but anyhow, and I've had hills to climb. All right, but but what I love about what is happening now is women of this generation are defining it. It's something that I feel like women of my generation have known and have worked through. But would you say tyranny? But we have not put labels on it. We didn't put definitions on it. And so it just it was something that happened in an undercurrent. I'm talking now the difference between feminism and womanism, right? We knew that, we had work to do, and we had to go about our work to receive liberation differently than our white sisters. So now this generation is labeling it. So I definitely had to identify that. Now, on to this topic of being a hoe. Like I said in my introduction, when I was younger, I ascribed being a hoe to someone who had very loose practices with sex. Then, and I'm using terms to, protect the innocent. Then during my college years, I'll say, I took ownership of my own sexuality. And after, a couple of dudes, did what some men can do and be, I said, oh, two can play at that game. And I decided to play at that game. And the power that comes from defining yourself, the power that comes from saying, no, I'm going to see you today. Thank you for dinner. Amen. Dinner tomorrow on you? All right. Okay. Thank you so much. Oh, today dinner? All right. Thank you.
Eat, sis. Eat right. All the food.
Eat all the food. Okay. Oh, and by the way, I do have myself my Old Bay wings. Okay. All right.
Wow.
All right.
I just see that power.
Power. Just
like the working power.
Old Bay.
Oh, she gave a whole new definition to getting up in the morning with all power in her hand.
My God, take it back.
But bottom line is, there is power in naming yourself, claiming yourself, owning who it is that you are. And for the first time, I experienced that. So I can't wait to have this conversation with my friends who are of my age and generation to hear what they have to say, because it is something that we do, but we as older women are not as vocal as younger women. And so I appreciate the fact, Tierney, that you and others are as vocal as you are.
I gotta go. This is beautiful for me.
Wait, before you go, I'm gonna come to you, but
Sure.
that deserves a mic drop.
If we
Okay, Kingmaker, go ahead.
Hey man, both of these segments have been so good, but it's something about how Karima delivers the truth that is so palatable for mass consumption. I want to go back because I know that people are going to watch this in replay. I was literally being facetious. If you don't understand who Too Short is, that probably didn't make any sense to you. But it was a phrase made popular by Too Short and some pimps of yesteryear. Within that dynamic, I do believe that this concept of being a hoe has positive and negative connotation. I think it is not gender specific. I think that it allows you to have a freedom to do what Tierney said I thought was so elegant, much like African Americans take the N word and create possession of it. She has now stated that, which just blew me away, they have now grabbed the authority of the word and taken the power into their own hands. I think that is most important because I think any word in the English language, particularly, and forgive me if this is going to offend you, but particularly in the African American context, where there is so much negativity labeled on words when you put it on Black people, when you can take the power and shift it from the owner in a negative standpoint, I think that is just genius. On top of that, to hear a woman talk about the decision-making power is something that I think jars most men, simply because, news alert, men are sensitive and fragile in their emotions in the large standpoint. And
you don't say.
Yeah, most people don't know that, Christian. I just wanted to give them an update because I didn't want to have any misconstruing of the perspective. The challenge
wars.
The challenge in this moment is that every man, when they are being honest about their description of a woman, will be honest to say they want a woman in the streets and they want a hoe in the sheets. And we say that because it is colloquially cool, but it is a reality that if men are honest in most circumstances, they want somebody who has expressed themselves sexually in the past. So to have that as a positive reaction to what you list when you are looking for a mate, and then use it as a derogatory term without quantifying how you're going to put the power on it, is minimizing your manhood, and it is also marginalizing your vocal truth as a man. On top of that, I think it is a real reality that if you're a man and you have been with more.
What was that for?
It's because Kirkland is back there. That's what it was for. It's really clear. And
Kirkland be on you.
Yeah, we have used colloquial in whatever. I'm not going to even define it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Send you your dollar. I ain't got time for you tonight. I don't. But anyway, I think it's important that we got to be honest as men. If you've been with more than 2 women, at some point in your journey, you've been a hoe. And it is something that you've got to embrace. You've got to be honest about. And once we're honest in the conversation, then we can move into the biblical passages that, based off of how you see it, if without a quote, quote, hoe, we never get Jesus. So this is a reality that we've got to embrace and then go into a deeper conversation as we dialogue.
Yes, sir. Yeah, yeah. Let's keep this conversation going. I'm definitely interested in kind of piggybacking off of that about we don't get Jesus. I have an idea where you're going, but we're gonna wait for a second to come back to that. Grayson, what are your thoughts on all of this Pro-Heaux, all that stuff that T said about God does not condemn and possibly affirm hoes and the definition of whole, especially your perspective as a same gender loving man? How does all of this resonate with you?
Like a very clear bell. This resonates a lot. And, you know, to get back into academia, you don't really get queer theology if you don't first have feminist and womanist theology. There's sort of like a progression, and there's others too that feed into queer theology, but one of them is feminist womanist. You know, looking at gender, questioning gender. Inevitably, you're going to start questioning sexuality because those two are strange bedfellows, sexuality and gender. So it resonates with me a lot. Just knowing that if not for the work of womanists, of course, founded or coined, I guess, by Alice Walker, then there probably wouldn't be queer theology, or at least as we know it. So I think in that sense, it just resonates almost like an echo through the past. But I think too, I mean, queer theology is, and queer lives, LGBTQ lives are, which of course does also include Black women who fall under the umbrella of womanism. You know, to walk into a room is to affirm our sexuality, because it is like, even not in having sex, but having asexuality is seen as by many to be I can't think of the word, to be a hoe. I can't think of the other word. So I think like you can't both affirm asexuality without, and not the word asexuality. You can't affirm a space sexuality without also affirming what asexuality allows you to do, which is to love someone else or yourself in the same way that God loves us, which is ecstatically, and which is your pleasure is intimately wrapped up in the pleasure of the other person or persons. And so I think God affirming hoe, God, and somebody said it, being a hoe, because I think if God's love is all encompassing, erotic love is part of that. So God loves us sexually and erotically, because why would God's love, which is love, not have that component that then we are able to express, and indeed which allows us to make life like God does. So yeah, God's a hoe. I mean, God has within God's self a polyamorous relationship of 3 different persons who have a model of what a healthy sexual and other relationship looks like. Pleasure is given and taken. It's uplifting and stepping back. And if not erotic energy, what is it that brings all of the world into relationship with one another? So I think God as love has to be a hoe. And the final thing I'll say is, one of the most memorable things from my college years was when I was interviewing for the newspaper that I wrote for on the campus, a white woman sociology professor. And I said something about like, yeah, but you know, men penetrate women. And she leaned forward and she was like, or do women envelop the penis? And I was like, well, damn, I guess you're right. And so I think in reclaiming hoe and reclaiming agency and reclaiming decision making, that is just reframing how we think about sex, particularly between a person with a penis and a person with a vagina. No, women aren't getting penetrated. They are taking the power, literally seeping the power out of the man. Like, your life-giving power is nothing as it stands within your testicles, and it is nothing unless I take it from you and then make something out of it. And in fact, you'll probably go flaccid as soon as we're done, lean over and fall asleep. Whereas I could keep going if I were a woman. I'm done.
In the words of Arsenio Hall, things that make you go, I never thought about that. That was really intriguing.
Mic drop.
Can I tell
Oh,
you,
yeah.
when I was growing up, we used to sing this song that said, wrapped up, tangled up. I just want to say, wrap me up, tangle me up.
Holy Ghost.
In your arms. So,
Holy Ghost. Come on here, somebody. You know, that's a really interesting concept that prior to today, I never really considered. Josh Carpenter asking the question, can God be a hoe? I mean, when we think about it, we say that God dwells on the inside of us. So if God dwells on the inside of us,
Wait a minute, preacher. Wait a minute.
is God not engaged in the sexual encounter every time we have sex? So could God be, with a positive connotation, the biggest hoe of us all?
Yes. How many babies does he have? How many baby mamas does he have?
So, and see, this like really unsettles people because we view hoe with a negative connotation. So you have to understand the basis of where we're coming from. You have to understand the basis. So if you're still thinking about this from the perspective of hoe is bad, that's negative. Don't you dare call my God a hoe. That's because you're looking at hoe in the negative. But not everybody looks at hoe the same way. Remember, we're reclaiming the term. Well, not we, the women have reclaimed the term. Now, for me personally, I never felt like hoe should be gender specific. That's just how I came up. I was like, so why is it when a chick has sex with a lot of dudes, she's a hoe, but then when a dude got a lot of chicks, he a player, he a pimp, and then we celebrate him, but we condemn her. Like that makes no sense in the world to me. I just don't understand it. But I want to kick it back to T real quick because T, we having all this conversation about pro-hoism and is God a hoe, and maybe God affirms your multiple sexual partners. Come on, T, where does the Bible fit in all of this? You can't tell me the Bible is going to support any of this nonsense that you up here spewing today about to get my church shut down. Please talk to us, T.
Man, if your church ain't shut down by now, you ain't got nothing to worry about, Reverend. I promise you.
Okay, so as we think about pro-hoism as it relates to the biblical text, I think we can look at certain stories that don't fit into the quote-unquote narrative of monogamy that has been taught to us by society and the way that we've been socialized. So if you look at David and all of the wives and concubines that he had, if you look in Song of Solomon, if you actually read it, don't just skip over it after you read Psalms, like read it. And if you think about Ruth and Naomi, if you think about Esther, if you think about all of the stories in the Bible where people were having multiple sexual partners and God didn't condemn them, God didn't cast them to hell, God didn't send them on this fiery, destructive path, nothing bad happened to them. They kept going on about their life, and some of them were even included in the lineage of Jesus. Then what makes you think that being a hoe and having multiple sexual partners and reclaiming their sexuality and being free in it is against what the Bible says, even though that's not how we ask the question or frame things in Greatest Commandment? Yeah.
So wait a minute. You do know that in the male patriarchy of ministerial leadership, this argument frustrates male preachers because it makes them feel like you are giving a pass to the direction of Christianity and God's omnipotence, and as most people would like to call, his permissive will. Now, I think, hey man, one more time. I promise you, do it one more time. Do it again.
I think he got you for omnipotence.
Omnipotence?
That's a tricky word.
On that one, Ross. I don't think that one should have been buzzed.
I might be permissive.
Permissive? You don't know what it means to permit?
I mean,
Ugh.
Omnipotent is all powerful. Keep going, Ross.
I think we gotta, this is a freeing conversation, I don't think traditionalists are okay with this, but I think we got to really have the true conversation, because if you look it up in American dictionaries, there is a confusion with the word harlot. And they sometimes in definition A use the term prostitute, but in definition B, they use the term whore, which is somebody who has multiple sexual partners with no real relationship. And if you're going to use those interchangeably, I believe it causes a quagmire, which means it causes some conflict, that you are finding yourself in the passage where, when you talk about Hosea and Gomer, you quickly have to do a deep dive to realize that Gomer is not a prostitute, although we hang that headline on her. Gomer is a whore. She has multiple sexual partners, and she does not do it in exchange for money. And God, in a metaphor, says, you can only represent me if you have gone through this relationship with a woman who has so many partners that you now understand what I feel like when I'm in relationship with Israel or with the church, which is now a scratching your head moment because we preach it, but we don't embody the fact that God says, I'm so in love with a whore that if I can't solidify the relationship in the Old Testament, I'll offer my son as a ring in the New Testament to solidify our relationship and literally have you for the rest of my life despite your issues. If that does not make you ask a question, then are we really preaching the gospel, or are we just glazing over it because it gives us really good headlines for our sermon?
Yeah, absolutely. And even to kind of expand on that, and I want to go to Myron after this because I know he has something mystical to share with us, honestly. So here's my thought. You talked about God telling Hosea to be with Gomer, and he's using that as a metaphor. And God is basically saying that Israel is like Gomer because Israel is like a whore, right? But if you look at it within the context of the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, like at that point in time, according to their theology within that context, God was only in a relationship with Israel. Then Jesus comes, and now God opens up God's self to everybody. So does God not become the whole by opening up God's self to all the nations and not just the one nation of Israel? There are so many questions that come out of this when you start thinking about it. But I know Myron the Mystic has something for us because we in this Bible now. So Myron, talk to us, please.
I've got so many thoughts here. First off, I am still uncomfortable with the term Pro-Heaux theology. And let me tell you why I'm uncomfortable, because I don't like a term that leads with action as opposed to agency. The term "hoe" to me is neutral. I mean, you could compare it to the term race car driver. You don't lead with their actions, you lead with their humanity. And I think, and Ross, you stole my thunder a little bit, because I want to go to the book of Hosea to suggest that if you look at the book of Hosea, they never call her a harlot. She's always called Gomer, because the whole idea of the book is that we are recovering her agency and her humanity, and we're not calling her a harlot as the people would call her. We're calling her human. And so my concern with Pro-Heaux theology is that we are leading with the fact that you're a hoe, when I don't think you're a hoe, I think you're a human. And because what human has not had sex? Or I mean, there are humans that have not had sex, right? But the majority of humans have had sex, because if they didn't, you wouldn't be here. Now, I will tell you this. I think y'all have helped me, that it's a self-proclamation, that if you want to proclaim yourself as a whole, you can, right? Just like if you want to say I'm a race car driver, you can. And long as it's a self-definition, but I'm still uncomfortable with the idea of us leading with a theology that divorces your actions from your agency. I want to call you by your agency and not by your actions, because I think that's the whole purpose of the book of Hosea, that you are not who you are based on what you've done. You are who you are based on your humanity.
Okay. Right. So
Thank
we
you for
throwing
that.
the
I don't think that deserves a mic drop, but I mean, help me out here, folks.
we throwing that monkey wrench in there, and this is what I want to do because we got 8 more minutes for this episode, and I think I know we'll do some more. Yeah, we'll do some more in the
Just
post
got
show.
started.
I know.
We got to do an extended version of this episode, Doc. We got to.
I understand. We're gonna do some more in the after show, but for the hour-long show on the podcast, we got about 8 minutes. So I want to hear what T has to say about what Myron said, and then I want to hear from Karima, and then I'll give T the final word before we kick this thing into the after party. T, what you got?
Help me out, T.
So my only pushback with your uncomfortability is that I feel like you still are looking at the definition of hoe as if it's negative. So it's like, if I'm calling myself a hoe, I'm taking agency over the word and over my own actions in order to place that label upon myself. If I'm sexually liberated and I choose to call myself a hoe, that's in relation with my humanity. That's in relation with the fullness of who I am as an individual. And so it's not a negative kind of connotation or taken away from who I am as an individual once you take that negative stereotype and the socialization of culture off of the term.
Let me ask a quick question. And you said something, Christian, that made me ask this question. If that is the case, do I still have the same authority to take if I were a player and make it a positive twist to it and invoke that concept? Just a question.
But player never had a negative connotation though. Like, so we don't have to reclaim the term player.
It's the male positive of being a hoe. We just made it in a patriarchal society the opposite in a positive dynamic because it's a patriarchal term of a whore. This is a person who has multiple women. He sleeps with these women, and because we live in a patriarchal society, we have ascribed it to be positive. But in its true parallel, it is the synonym for a hoe in positivity. Right, could so that have the same concept?
I think contextually, and I want to go over to Karima. I think contextually that player never had a negative connotation within the societal context. So I understand that at its core, the player was the same thing as the hoe. I understand that component. But what we're talking about right now is social constructs, right? The term hoe is a social construct. And when hoe was introduced into culture, it was introduced with a negative connotation. Player was never introduced or seen with a negative connotation, which is an offshoot of the patriarchy. So you don't need to reclaim the term player because you always had the agency. Men always had the agency when it came to player. So we were always celebrated if we had multiple women.
So it's about authority in the context of society.
Absolutely, because all of our forms of oppression are rooted in power. So that's why it's so unnerving for women to reclaim their power, because patriarchy is built on women being submissive and being weak. So when a woman reclaims her power, it makes men nervous who have rooted all of their masculinity in having power over women. But now a woman has power over you, that causes you to question your entire identity. So, but I don't want to keep going with this right now because we got to hear from Karima. I know we got to hear from Karima. Karima, talk to us.
I'm just going to make this real short. This is so freaking amazing that we're having this conversation. First of all, Christian, thank you so much for even seeing the importance and the necessity of allowing this conversation. For me, I think I rest my case on the fact that it's just what you just said, Christian. You know how we talk about, decolonizing and whatnot? Well, there is this whole entire movement of demanizing shit as well. So I feel like that's exactly what's happening here. And it's something that, again, women of my generation, it's what we did. We didn't necessarily talk about it because at that time it wasn't accepted for us to talk about it, to be public with it. But now, we can go going around here singing about WAP and such. So, we're reclaiming everything, right? And redefining who gets to define me. And so What I love most about this conversation and what I hope that the listeners consider is that I have agency over myself. And I can't wait until the after show because, Myron, I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear what it is that you have to say. I almost want to concede like 30 of my seconds to Myron. Come on, Myron.
All right, we're going to come to it in a minute, I promise. But, you know, that's just going to be for the patrons because I want to hear T for at least a couple of minutes. But here's something that I want to drop before I kick it over to T. For those who are listening who are very uncomfortable with this conversation, I want you to understand we are not suggesting that everybody go out and be a hoe. We're not suggesting that everybody take on multiple partners. That is not what we're suggesting. The purpose of this conversation is to get people to stop condemning others who choose to have agency over their own sexuality. So I'm not saying you need to be a hoe. What I'm saying is we, as especially people of faith, need to separate ourselves from the judgmentalism that has saturated our faith expression. Because there are people out here who really love God and they have multiple sex partners and they do it in a safe way. They do it in a consensual way. And we've seen all throughout the scriptures so many examples of this. So if you need some more examples, just go back and listen to our other episodes. We talk about sexual freedom in the Bible all the time. So again, we're not trying to tell you, hey, everybody just need to go out and be a hoe, because that might not be your thing. But what we're trying to get you to do is stop being so damn judgmental of everybody and trying to stop everybody else from expressing their own sexuality in their own way. T, please close us out. What you got?
I think my final word kind of speaks to a little bit of what Christian and Karima have both been saying. So Pro-Hoism and Pro-Ho theology has been a part of our culture and our society. It's just something that we didn't give a name and something that we didn't talk about. Your grandmama and them who were down 10 toes deep in the church was making sure that their bills got paid, and they was making sure that they had food, and they was making sure that the house ran the way the house was supposed to run, no matter what they did to get it done. And so these concepts and these ideas have always been a part of our society, but we're giving them names for ourselves. And so when you think about a pro-hoism theology, this is against all forms of erasure and systemic oppression. So similar to the way that womanism is for everybody and the liberation of all people, this is for everybody and the liberation of all people. If you could get this in your brain to where, not saying that you need to live it out, but that you are in allyship with, and that you understand how somebody else being a hoe doesn't negatively affect you, and the judgment that you have towards them is not necessary, then we can talk about being in community with one another. Then we can talk about sex. We can talk about pleasure. We can talk about what it means to be in healthy and whole relationships without casting judgment on people just because they do something different than we do. So pro-hoism isn't telling you, like Christian said, to go out here and be a hoe. It's telling you that you need to stop oppressing people just because they do things differently than you.
All right, we over our time, so I'm gonna go ahead and shut it down. We got way more to do in the after show. Listen, if you want to be a part of the after show, just join us on Patreon. I promise you, even if you can't catch the recording live, you can go back and watch it because we leave it up for our patrons to see. Join us next time. We're coming back with the ethics of pornography. Lord have mercy. We'll see y'all next time right here on Holy Smokes, Cigars and Spirituality.